to look now at folate, also known as folic acid. Again, folic acid or folate acts as a coenzyme for DNA synthesis and also acts for metabolizing amino acids and histocysteine. Folate can be found in different foods, any type of animal product like meats, fish, eggs, and milk. And a deficiency leads to a type of anemia called megaloblastic or macrocytic anemia. And this is characterized by very large, immature red blood cells. So your body is able to make the red blood cells, but because of the impairment in the DNA synthesis, they never really mature. And so they aren't able to divide, and they're not able to carry the oxygen throughout the bloodstream, resulting in anemia. Folate's important during pregnancy, especially the early stages of pregnancy. So for women of childbearing years, even if they're not considering becoming pregnant, oftentimes folate is recommended as a supplement or to make sure they're getting adequate amounts in order to have the best possible outcome. If a pregnant mom has inadequate folate intake, we can see that there are defects that occur. They're called neural tube defects. During the first 6 weeks of pregnancy, the spinal cord and the nerves at the end of the brain are developing. So lack of folate can lead to a defect called anencephaly, and this is lack of brain, or spina bifida, which is an improper development of the spinal cord. So it fails to close completely, and it can bulge through the back. The results could lead to paralysis, incontinence, learning disabilities, and other health concerns. And studies have definitely linked that there's a link between inadequate folate intake and the neural tube defects. So back in 1998, the manufacturers and the government decided that this was extremely important, and so they have started to make sure that any type of grain product is fortified with folic acid, which is the synthetic form of folate, in order to make sure that women are taking in adequate amounts of folate. Vitamin B12, it has a variety of functions. The major function is to convert folate enzyme to the active form that is needed for DNA synthesis. And it's also used for homocysteine metabolism. Unlike other vitamins, where inadequate intake leads to a deficiency, in this case, vitamin B12 deficiency is because of a lack of absorption. So for whatever reason, the gut is not absorbing the vitamin B12. And intrinsic factor helps to increase that B12 absorption. Intrinsic factor is a protein-like compound that we produce in the stomach. But as we age, that absorption and that production of intrinsic factor decreases. So sometimes in the elderly population, we see that they need to have shots of B12 in order to get adequate amounts. And those shots will then help to correct the deficiency and improve absorption. When a deficiency does occur, we have either pernicious anemia or we have the megaloblastic macrocytic anemia that occurs. The megaloblastic anemia, as mentioned previously, occurs whenever we don't have adequate B12. The pernicious anemia means leading to death, and that is associated with nerve degeneration, which can lead to paralysis and to death. So that kind of gives a general overview, a very limited overview of the B vitamins, but it gives you an idea of what they do. And now the last water-soluble vitamin is vitamin C, which is also known as ascorbic acid. And vitamin C is absorbed in the small intestine. It's found in all living tissue, and it has 4 major functions. Collagen synthesis, acts as an antioxidant, is important for iron absorption, and immunity. Keep in mind that collagen is the main structural protein found in connective tissue, in our skin, our bones, our teeth, tendons, and blood vessels. It's also important for wound healing. I think everybody knows the story in past history classes of scurvy and how important vitamin C was in terms of healthy gums for the sailors. Today, there's some talk that vitamin C actually helps to prevent a cold. Not true, but it may help to lessen the symptoms and the amount of time that a person has a cold. In terms of an antioxidant, it's a scavenger, so it's a scavenger of free radicals, and it may help to prevent certain cancers. For iron absorption, if somebody is having a product that has iron in it, if they take a product that has vitamin C in it at the same time, it's going to help increase that iron absorption. So if you have a patient who has a low iron level and they want to know, how can I get this up? Recommend a food that has a good source of iron in it, such as a red meat, and tell them to cook it in an iron skillet and add some type of a vitamin C to it, such as tomato sauce. That would help to increase the amount of iron that the person absorbs. And finally, as I said with the immunity, it does help in terms of preventing certain cancers. It's very important for us, but don't get caught up in the idea that taking excess amounts of vitamin C is going to help you stay healthy and prevent a cold. Eating a good healthy diet, getting plenty of sleep and exercise helps you to do that. Now the last nutrient that we're going to look at is water. And water is an essential nutrient. We can survive without food for approximately 6 weeks, but you can only survive a few days without water. Water is necessary, and even though water is not energy yielding, like carbohydrates, proteins, and fat, it is considered a macronutrient. Water makes up about 50 to 70% of the human body, and the total fluid volume in the body is approximately 10 gallons. Lean tissue has a high water content, and fat has about 20% water. So the higher the percentage of lean tissue we have, the higher percentage of water we have in our body. We know that water is important for many different reasons. It's important for chemical as well as metabolic reactions. Water is a solvent. So we find water intracellularly, which means within the cells, and extracellularly, which means within the blood. And we constantly have a shifting of the amount of water that's occurring within the blood and within the cells themselves. The process of the water moving from one area to another, when it goes from a higher concentration to a lower concentration, is called osmosis. And water is important. We need it for regulating body temperatures, for the removal of waste products, as a lubricant, for making saliva, bile, and amniotic fluid. Water is also important for perspiration. That's our mechanism that helps to prevent us from overheating. That's why we sweat. When we sweat, fluid is being released through the skin pores, and then that evaporates, and that's what cools us down and keeps us cool and prevents the body temperature from rising. And we also know that thirst, or the feeling or sense or need to drink, is important because that helps to keep the fluid levels where they need to be in the body and to prevent dehydration. Keep in mind that we can get fluid from both food and from beverages. The general recommendation for total fluid intake for women is 11 cups a day, and men should consume approximately 15 cups a day. Importantly, the majority of this intake should come from water. Women need 9 cups of water a day, and men should get about 13 cups of water a day. So thirst is that feeling or sense or need to drink, and there are 2 hormones that are responsible for this. One is antidiuretic hormone, also known as ADH, and the other is aldosterone. Now, ADH is released by the pituitary gland, and it tells the kidney to conserve water. So if our fluid levels start to decline in the bloodstream, ADH is released, and we don't put out as much urine. Aldosterone is released from the adrenal glands and also signals the kidney to retain sodium, which also leads to water retention. So we want to make sure that we're getting adequate amounts of water on a daily basis in order to prevent dehydration. In some cases, some people will take in excess amounts of water. This happens a lot in terms of cyclers. We've seen some issues in the past with competitive cyclers where they've consumed excess amounts of water. And keep in mind that an excess intake of water will dilute the blood electrolytes, overwhelm the kidneys and their ability to secrete fluids, and in extreme cases, water toxicity can lead to death. So that gives us a good overview in terms of water and vitamins, and we will be moving on to the last nutrient then, which are minerals.